WWE over the last month has gone to Europe and have had their televised European tour. From what you've gathered, from what you've surmised over this recent tour in the UK and parts of Eastern Europe, how do for us American fans, do you feel that the American crowd has taken live WWE wrestling for granted?
How can you not? When we surmise these concepts, right?
Hmm.
One of the things that I brought up was the fact that American fans essentially are spoiled with this because this is an American promotion. It was made in New York, based out of Connecticut, has its American tours, and other countries who don't get this stuff are going to obviously react a certain way because they don't get this all the time. European tours for professional wrestling from American promotions have always been pretty successful. I mean, it's not just for WWE. It was like that for TNA for a while. And as you can see with AEW, whenever they bring their shows over to London, they fill out. They filled out fairly well. I think that American fans, even in the wake of this boom period WWE has been in, I think they've been doing better in the past couple of years, but as a whole, there have been multiple years where WWE fans would just show up and not make any noise. And part of that is because the product wasn't exactly the greatest. But in the same regard, if you're going to show up, you have to be able to find fun in something. Like, you don't want everything to be a dud. So it's kind of been on the fault of them and the fault of the company. But even in the wake of the companies doing better, the funny thing is that if you look at some of these crowds now, sometimes they hijack the show with their reactions if you go to the European crowds.
Yeah, they
Because
do.
they'll be loud for certain segments and then they'll die off for others. No different than you see in America. It's just it's weird. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I appreciate the enthusiasm that they've shown when it's their turn. But in the same regard, it's not spread evenly throughout the show or even handsomely throughout the show, I should say. And it feels like it's really bringing to light a lot of the things that we've mentioned, how hollow the product can feel at times, and how a lot of these stars that are more than deserving of good reactions aren't getting them because there's not enough familiarity with them, because they're not being used the way that maybe would work to their benefit or the way that they deserve to be used. Like, I was looking at a clip from SmackDown where Casey Catanzaro, I think she's Katana Chance now,
Yes.
and Kaden Carter were doing a very impressive tag move. Jesus, Katana Chance is an unbelievable athlete. Uh, they were doing a move, and the crowd was going mild for the move, where you just see you see a whole human hand standing on another human's shoulders and doing a splash, and nothing.
And nothing.
And it made me upset because I sat there and I was like, I can't blame them for feeling that way, because where have these two been for the longest, or they haven't been promoted the best whenever they've been given chances on TV. But even so, I mean, that's still a very impressive thing. You'd think there would have been at least a bit of a reaction, but there wasn't much, and it really does break my heart because now you're starting to see like a counter effect of these European crowds, where it's like they'll get hyped for the things that the American fans should get hyped for a little bit more, but then universally it's like it doesn't matter where you go, certain things just aren't going to get much love, and it's hard to watch at times, I'll say that.
It shouldn't be that way, because like it shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately that's what we're given now. Like they recently had this run to obviously to promote WrestleMania, but at the same time expose their new stars. But in the same token, like it also didn't do like the other people that you're trying to bring up a good service as well. So it's just almost like a lot of those fans are attracted to the personalities that they do promote on TV. So what you see from the American crowd, it also in some ways reflects upon the European crowd, because they are not as invested into the other people, because all you're seeing from the from their perspective is the Cody Rhodes, the Seth Rollins, the Roman Reigns, the CM Punks, the Drew McIntyres, and then you get your favorites, you get your Charlotte Flairs, you get your Rhea Ripleys, your Liv Morgans, but when it comes to everybody else, it's like they're not as invested. I think that and we've talked about this off air, where Trips has to do a much better job of spreading the wealth in terms of how you promote your talent, especially the undercard, because they're they're your support system when your main event scene needs it. Yes, the main event scene right now is going great, but I do feel that you to better support what you have going on the main event scene, you got to develop what you have, with your undercard, whether it's the mid card or the low card, like all rungs of the card in a wrestling card. They're all equally important. It's not just the main event scene that you have to tune into. I think I know you can echo the same. Like that has to be better so that when you do again go to these tours, these fans are more invested. They have more knowledge in terms of who they're getting into, in terms of these other competitors, because they're very, very talented. Like you just mentioned, Casey and of course Caden Carter. They've improved and done a great job since being on the main roster over the last year and some change. Obviously, the American crowds do the same thing in terms of not being as invested, but you still have to find something that can hook people into them, so that when you guys when they do have these tours, you don't get that drop off in terms of excitement or appreciation in terms of what you're seeing in the ring. Because if she did a great spot, like if Bianca did that, or Io did that, they'll be going crazy. Like, you should have the same energy for those who are doing just as good as well. Just because they're not on as high on the card as they should be, doesn't mean that they're not good or good, talented for you to be invested in. Like this is why they're on the main roster for. This is why they have as much depth in that roster, whether it's NXT and or main roster, that those things are important. And I think that if they're able to do that better, them going overseas, I think the reception will be better. That's just me.
Well, it all starts from that book in the creative room, and they need to start figuring out how to up the identities, assign identities, increase the identities of some of these people, and giving them ample time to really get that out there, which you would think it wouldn't be a problem, considering they have 2 3-hour programs right now. But they have to keep pushing, and if it means integrating certain people with other people, having them associate with bigger stars so that people can know who they are, because in some hours I know viewership can drop off and here and there, but they just got to keep staying consistent with it. They have to start off strong, and then stay consistent with it. They need that across the board. You got 3 tag divisions, you got 4 secondary titles, and you got 2 world championships. Not everything has to be about the belts, but you can't be pushing all this stuff during a content era and then having most of the content feel hollow. So
that's true. That is true. All right, man.